Welcome to the Humble Pie Podcast. This is the podcast that is life admin for your soul.
My name is Teresa.
And I'm Mush.
And we are your hosts. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode. This is episode 6 now.
Woo, welcome to episode 6.
Yeah, we're actually halfway through the season now.
Wow.
That's great.
Wow.
Inching closer to the end of the year. I think we planned that all the episodes would lead us to the end of the year, and then we'd have a special Christmas episode and everything. Yeah. I think we're still on track. So thanks for joining us again. This week we have another special guest. Woo! We have Geoffrey here with us.
Hey guys.
Hello. So this week's episode is called Chief Cornerstone. So as you know, this season we're doing the different names of God/Jesus, him revealing himself to us and the different aspects of his personality. So before we get into that, Geoffrey, would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us who you are, what you do.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, first of all, Michelle and Teresa, thank you so much for having me here.
Of course.
Absolute pleasure.
Thanks so much for coming.
I really am glad to be here. I'm really excited about the topic we're going to talk about, but also just glad to be having a chat with you guys. It's been fun so far. I'm looking forward to it. So a bit about myself. Yes, my name's Geoffrey. I've known Michelle for about 10 years.
Oh my gosh, 10 years.
Just to, not to age us, but yeah, we met at university. And it's been a real pleasure. I think our friendship, never probably had, like many, I think, post-uni relationships. It's kind of the seasons of, I think, being in touch, being out of touch.
Yes.
But I think it's a testament to the friendship that here we are still. So
I love it.
Because we met at Christian Union when we were freshers in first year. How crazy!
Wow, such a long time ago.
Yeah.
Even thinking about that makes you think about just my own journey over the last 10 years and kind of just how faithful God has been. And I think it ties in with the topic we're going to talk about. So I think just reflecting on the last, I guess, 10 years since university, I think that this year being a marker in a way of wow, because that was such a defining period of my life. You get to think about that journey, and it's fascinating because I think during life and during the seasons, you're not always conscious of kind of how much God is playing a hand in things, and it does often feel things can often feel so arbitrary, they don't make sense. And there has been a real enjoyment this year, particularly for reasons I think I'll come on to, that has allowed me to kind of look back over the last several years and just see how it was all kind of being tied together, even things that were difficult, challenging seasons of my life. I think it's all reaffirmed that concept that God really is the cornerstone in my life.
So Chief Cornerstone, let's get into it then. So like we've been discussing in previous episodes, it is in the Old Testament where we see God really introducing himself to his people, which are the Israelites. Most of it has been from Deuteronomy, but today I'm taking a verse from Isaiah 28 verses 16. This one's the NIV version. And it says, "So this is what the sovereign Lord says. See, I lay a stone in Zion, a tested stone, a precious cornerstone for a sure foundation. The one who relies on it will never be stricken with panic." Amen. So in the Old Testament, we know there's prophecies of what is to come, that God is going to send his son down, Jesus, and descriptions of him, the type of person he's going to be. So cornerstone. So, as someone who's studied architecture, I thought this would be interesting to throw a little bit of knowledge in there, act like I know what I'm talking about. So in ancient building practices, the cornerstone was the principal stone that was placed there, and that stone had to be perfect size, perfect height, in order to hold everything up. So everything that was built around that one stone. And Jesus has described himself as the foundation of the church, and everything should be built up on him. So we have the literal translation, we have Jesus himself, who we believe in and follow, and I hope we are all making our foundation to build up upon. So that's just a little kind of background. But Geoffrey, first of all, I want to know, why did you choose Cornerstone? I know you've said that it's very important to you, but why did it stand out to you?
Good question. So I think when we were looking at different topics and that word definitely stood out to me. I think I just find something so stabilizing about the words, something so immovable, and particularly I think where life and circumstances can just be so shaky. And in the past couple of years, I've really seen things which I thought were just givens, or like kind of that's going to happen that way, completely be upended. And it's like, man, there's nothing you can hold on to in this life, and even things which we take for granted, you know. And I think the reality for me is coming to a realization that Christ and my faith, it really is, I think, the only immovable, the only thing I can say, this is, I can put my hat on it, I can put my life on it, I want to build my life on it. And it just, for me, means that it's such a stabilizing presence in my life, irrespective of what is going on. And then I think to kind of step back away from myself and to just look at scripture and just to see how the church as a whole is built on who he is, on his name, on his word. And so, because you know, church can be a lot of things, and I've grown up in church, and it's been amazing. It can often be challenging as well. It can be a lot of things, but the fact that it's not governed by our personalities, it's not governed by kind of our own ideas, or you know, whatever it is, but that actually Christ is building his church. So those two things for me really kind of hone it back in and kind of give me that confidence that this all is kind of in his hands.
Definitely. It's so true what you say about the church, that this organization of like billions of people, with how different we are, that we can still unite under something common. Like only God could do that.
For real. Only our creator.
Only God, because the way that like society is so divided. So I mean, you know, there's politics, there's all sorts. But a recent example, I was traveling a couple of weeks ago, and I went to a church in a country I've never been to, in a city I've never been to. Just walked in and I felt at home, because the thing I knew was I love God and I'm living my life for him, and I know everyone else in this room is as well.
Absolutely.
And so we're not blood relations, but we are family.
That's lovely.
What a blessing.
What a blessing indeed.
Absolutely.
Seriously. I hadn't even thought about it like that. That's really nice.
It's special because, and I try to do that everywhere I go. Like I went to a church in Portugal, same thing. Don't know anybody, don't even speak the language, but I know if you're here, you love God and I love God. So we're both like being guided and deeply loved by and deeply loving God, like both committed to a relationship. So I already know on some level we connect. It's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Absolutely. And so I think on that point, so you have the cornerstone, and I think another thing about that word I love so much is it points to this idea of there's a building process going on. And you know, we see kind of in verses in the New Testament that begins to talk about other living stones and kind of how we form part of that church. And so I think one of the reasons why we feel that sense of unity when we kind of come across other believers, irrespective of their culture and how they were brought up, you know, language barriers, is because something inside of us, I think, resonates. That's the same Holy Spirit working in us. We're part of that same living structure that he is building. And I think that will be fully realised, you know, on that day. But even I think here on earth, we can really feel that that Christian community, which I mean has done so much for me personally. I know that's for a lot of others as well.
So true. So Geoffrey, what would you say are the main things that we can learn from this definition of God?
Sure. So when I was thinking and preparing ahead of time, I think there were a few different thoughts that came to mind. More recently, I think I can probably categorize it as, not to sound allegorical, as patience, purpose, and personal. So I think patience, so one is, so like Teresa, spent some time working in the architectural built environment sector. So I'm a communications advisor by trade. So I work with different sectors, helping with their comms, and I spent a few years working with property developers, and so it actually meant I spent a lot of time working on site. I'd actually have to go down to site, talk to a lot of these builders,
Cool.
like kind of senior construction managers, and just talk through. So where we obviously be working with the wider community and doing the kind of public affairs, a lot of it just involved kind of construction newsletters where it's like, this is where we are.
And the phases.
The phases, exactly. And one thing that always used to strike me was, let's say they've got a 2.5 year build project, right? And they want to build a few hundred homes. Now, after a year, it just looks like no progress has been made, because they're doing all of the kind of the underground works, doing all of the piling, which is a very noisy, painful process that it feels very disruptive to everyone around. You don't see kind of anything happening, and then they put in the pile caps, and it's this kind of, it's very extensive process all underground, and you think to yourself, I don't think they're making time. I mean, it's like they're not making any progress. They're just like a big hole in the ground, and then the hole's there. And then months later, they're just doing stuff in the hole, and nothing is happening. And obviously, what they're doing is they're kind of doing all the foundations. And what I think in ancient terms they would refer to as the cornerstones. And then once that part is complete, you then find there's a turning point where they start to kind of develop the superstructure and what we can see above ground, and then on top of that there's all the brickwork, and that part is rapid. I mean, it's literally like I would come back once a month and to do these updates, and so that first year it's like, okay, very little update, and then when it starts to kind of come up above ground, every month it's like you're seeing a completely different structure. I mean, the progress is phenomenally rapid, but of course that's only made possible because of the extensive work that's gone underground, which actually is going to hold the structure for decades and decades and decades to come. And I think there's a lot there that I took about just trusting the Lord's work in our own lives, which can often feel like, man, not much is really happening here. This is slow. I don't really know what's going on here.
So painful and messy.
And I mean, just to kind of dovetail, different identities of God. So not only he's the cornerstone, but he is the architect and the person at work who's building, who's doing the building, and just trusting in his work, trusting in his workmanship. And then I began to see in different ways fruits. I think fruit and vines is a kind of a different analogy to building, but it's all the same thing, which is kind of, you have the stuff underground that you can't see, and then you have kind of the fruit of that, which can develop very quickly once that initial process has taken place. And so I really actually do, and I think always will, identify a lot with that cornerstone analogy. It's just allowing that rooting and that planting and that do work to take place, that will allow all the other things that can come from it, so that when things do begin to happen, and so in my case this year, I got married, and that was a really thank you very much. It was so it's been a really obviously exciting celebratory year, but I definitely appreciate, I think, several of the years beforehand when a lot of kind of character forming processes that often felt tedious or painful, or just going around in circles, actually have allowed me to be able to relate to my wife in a way which maybe 4 or 5 years ago I probably would have handled entirely differently, and in probably quite a destructive way. So patience is definitely something I learned when I think of Cornerstone.
Gosh, that is such a good example. I think
so thorough.
So thorough, because I think the way God works is mysterious and it's wonderful, because if I don't know much about buildings, so I'll pick up on what you said about the trees, but you're so right that when you see a tree, it may look huge and big and there's all this fruit, but underneath it's like 10 times as much.
Absolutely.
And the only reason that it can bear all this fruit and has such huge branches and be so big, the only thing that supports that growth is those roots. And I feel like such a strategy of kind of the world and the enemy is to distract you from letting God invest in those roots.
Absolutely.
Because anything that's not built with those roots will crumble.
Yes.
And you know, the devil knows that, and so he's always just like, don't worry about the roots, don't forget about the roots, don't, you know, tries to get in the way of that deep, painful work, because he knows once you have that, the like progress and the growth and the speed of it, it's like amazing.
Yeah, absolutely that. It's just so true. And I think another way in which the enemy does try to distract us is by convincing us that, you know, the cornerstone is not there, or it's not really at work. You know, one of the things about you know, substructure and foundations is you can't actually see that from the outside. And I think much the same with how God works in our life. Like he is, it says in the Bible, you know, he is unseen. We can't see him with the physical eye. And it can be so easy, if we're not careful, to allow ourselves to believe the lie of the enemy, that he's not at work. And you know, to those who don't know him, he's convincing that he doesn't exist at all. When in reality, he is the cornerstone. He is under the structure, but the reality is he is the most real, living person, entity in existence, out of which we all have we live and breathe and have our being. So I find that really encouraging.
I'm very encouraged. I'm so encouraged.
So you also mentioned people and purpose
and patience.
So patience. So patience is the first one, right? So tell us about the others. Sure.
So purpose, I think, if I can just go back to the analogy of kind of construction again, what I like about, and what I think I'm reassured when I think of Cornerstone, is that there's a building work going on. This is leading to something. You don't just put a cornerstone there just for the sake of it. You know. So the Lord has a plan to build something, and whether that's kind of he's building his church, whether he's intricately knitting our lives together, there's an end point. And so, you know, if you think of even modern day property developers, before they've even, you know, put one kind of shovel in the ground, they know exactly, they've got kind of, you know, complete CGIs of exactly what they want it to look like, what the purpose will be, etc. That being said, you know, because humans fail, I see a lot of developments that start but don't complete. For a number of reasons. It could be because they run out of money. Maybe like the owner runs out of passion and finds another project elsewhere. It could be because of hostility in the surrounding community, for all different reasons. But you see, not so much in this country, but even here in London and certainly in other parts of the world, a lot of developments and projects, and that's why the Bible says, you know, if you're gonna start something, count the costs, because you don't want to kind of build and then not finish. But what we find about God is we know that nothing that he starts, he'll just leave. He will complete anything he starts. And so there's a verse in scripture, Philippians 1:6, where it says, being confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it unto completion until the day of Christ Jesus. And so that same confidence, that knowing that the Lord is doing work in our lives as he's with the church, and he will complete it. And so particularly where we can see in our lives things maybe aren't going the way we want it to, or we wonder whether there is any direction at all, it can feel quite aimless at times, quite rudderless. But it isn't at all. The Lord is, he has a plan, he has an end goal, he's working in our lives, he's guiding us. And I think that sense of, on the days when I feel purposeless, the days when I feel I don't have the motivation, his purpose remains strong. His intentions, his plans remain just as intense and just as clear. I find really reassuring. So
I really love that idea that even when we in ourselves can't see the big plan, that he is still always working towards it. Everything is working towards it.
And then when I think about the personal as well, if I was just to go back to that analogy one more time, so in the definition of cornerstone, one part it says all other stones will be set in reference to this stone, thus determining the position of the entire structure. And if we see ourselves as part of the wider church, that there's a place specifically for me, and that I am a stone within the church, and that means that all of all that I am, all as a person, my idiosyncrasies, my humour, what I find funny, what I like doing, the choices that I make, all of that, God has played a part in knitting who I am as a person, and that it's not just just kind of some random thing, but he really does delight in me, and in the same way he delights in all of us in really particular, specific ways. I think we tend to think about God loves his children, but I really think the day will come and we'll stand before him and we'll realise how much he delights in us specifically. Like this person and no one else like this person. I love the way they're like this and like that. And that means that there's something about how I'm living my life and how he's working his life through me, which he finds particular delight and pleasure in the same way he does with so many others. And as a result, I'm a stone in that kind of master structure, really. And it goes back to purpose as well. So there's a purpose for why I'm in his big plan. And so I think where a lot of people in this world do struggle with significance, do struggle with sense of meaninglessness, and that's something I really did struggle with post uni. I think it was definitely more than uni blues. It was a real sense of what is my life about, and it lasted for quite a long time, and it led to some radical decisions, me kind of going abroad to try and find myself and all different things. Coming back to a place, and I'm really grateful that I began to learn that revelation that there's huge significance to my life and to the lives of those around me as well. So it influences how I love others just because of how specific and intentional God is towards each of us.
And I can just pick up on that as well. I feel like you were saying, failure as well is something that teaches us a lot. Like when you say you're coming out of uni, me personally, when I came out of uni, I expected a lot of things to fall into place, that so many things were going to happen in terms of career or my finances or where I was going to live, things like that. And it just didn't work out that way. And it was like, if it doesn't work out that way, then what is the point of me even doing anything? Because why did it not work out that way? And it's obviously, as you grow in God, as you become more mature, you understand that it's not that this is my plan and it should have worked out this way and so that's it, then there's no other way. This is like hinge on to God and create that firm foundation, and then you can build up from there, and then you can understand where God is taking you, or the paths that didn't work out and the doors that were shut, but the ones that opened instead. And like you were saying earlier, Mishana, the fruitfulness, you will see the fruit from the failure that you might have had many years ago.
And I think also, like, it kind of ties into, God's role as our teacher. He has a plan and a purpose for us as individuals. And, I'm always really struck by the grace of God that he is aware that we are not perfect. He's more aware of our imperfections than we are. So it's not that he just is like, here's the plan, now go. Like, he's like, I will guide you through this. I have a plan, I have a purpose, but I'm not expecting you to know everything. And I think that's another thing that we can get consumed of, where we try to find our purpose in ourselves. And you look inwards, and then you realize, I actually don't know. Like, I want to know what I want to know where I'm going, I want to walk through life with like this purpose and feel that significance, but I can't find it in me. And like, the deeper you look in yourself, it's not there, right? Until you find God, and then you see it in him, and he says, this is who I say you are. And then you feel something that says, wow, that's what I've been looking for. I think it is, I've really been struck lately by how so much of all that we are is on purpose. I've really, for a while, so I'm half Caribbean, half African, and I've always felt a bit like I didn't quite fit in anything, right? So, I don't quite know what to do in certain situations. I've just always felt a little bit like awkward, and I used to pray like, God, send me to an island where there's like just people like me, so we can all be a bit half of things together. And I'm sure other people have, different identity crises that look, for us, I'm sure we all have a similar experience, but that's the one where I was really like, no one understands this, it's so hard. Until I really felt like God was like, I love that about you, like that is on purpose. And I really felt lately like God has been revealing to me the ways in which he uses that particular aspect of me in different social situations and amongst different types of people. And it's interesting because it's like something that I was so quick to be like, oh, this makes me uncomfortable, this makes me feel different, this makes me feel like I don't quite fit neatly into any kind of box. It's actually something that God was like, no, but that's on purpose. Like, I love that about you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think everybody has, and that's just one thing, but in different ways, I think everything, what you like, what you don't like, who you connect with, who you don't connect with, your strengths and your weaknesses, it's all stuff God is like, oh, that's my girl. Like,
Yeah, definitely.
you know, I love how she does that, or we're working on that, or, you know, whatever it is.
Absolutely.
I think it's a blessing to know you fit into something.
Yeah,
Yes.
And that you being completely you is what God intended. Like, you, Teresa, you, Geoffrey, me, Mashana, you guys listening, you are as intended. Yeah, we're all works in progress,
Yeah.
but He doesn't want you to be something else.
Yeah.
Absolutely, definitely. And I think that, and it's something I've really struggled with and taken comfort in at different times of my Christian journey about what part is God's part and what part is our part.
Yeah.
So, there's the verse where it talks about a man plans his way, but the Lord orders his steps. And it's like, well, which one is it? Like, how can they both be true? And they are. And I think there is just a kind of a beautiful, strange harmony between going back to where we are planning our lives and we have a vision for our life, and then God has one as well. And we can have confidence in what He's doing, but there's also freedom for us just to not always have to overthink things, or kind of, because I think an example of something overthought was, if you go back to the parable of Jesus and the talents, and there was a master who gave 3 talents to people. The one who kind of went and buried his talent, I think that was an example of just overthought, got really fearful.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want to do the wrong thing, so I'm going to kind of hide it here. And that's not what God wants us to do.
Yeah.
I think part of the reassurance of kind of thinking about that He's a cornerstone, that He's our rock, that He's planned from the end, from the beginning, is that sense of, within the boundaries of kind of what we know to be right and what we have peace within our hearts, express our personality, express kind of what we want to do, find ourselves, and then we'll find ultimate fulfillment in Him. A lot of the things that we will tend to struggle with and find that, oh God, I'm hopeless at this, He does actually rescue, and when we find that in His own way He restores. And there are several gifts that I'd laid down and thought this just isn't compatible with God's plan for my life, or it's not compatible with what I see possible, and I've forgotten about, and then years later He's bringing back round, and I'm like, wow, He's he really is switched on.
He's got a plan.
Yeah. So finally, we've been talking about the names of God, but this one I feel like is specifically Jesus. So we see most of this cornerstone reference in the New Testament. And as Christians, we know that Jesus is God's Son. Jesus is God on earth, part of the Trinity, 3 in 1. So that Jesus is God manifest on earth. So He came to teach us, and He was amongst us. So I just want to ask if you could touch on the New Testament and Jesus.
Sure, no, it's a really good question, and it definitely is, I think, crucial to understanding this concept of cornerstone, because we can talk about all the analogies in the world, but if someone has in their mind a different concept of what that cornerstone is, then it's all wrong. And so it does all hinge on the reality of who He is, what He did for us, and that really kind of being the foundation of the truths that we believe as Christians. So I think for myself, going back to something we spoke earlier on, within a church context, within family context, it can be so easy to lose sight of what really matters, what it's really for. Culture can sometimes begin to drown out the core essence of things, and I often kind of find myself, I do this quite a lot. I always am writing either to-do lists or like goals, and I'll write like several times a week, like, what are my goals, what are my priorities, as I'm constantly having to remind myself in the busyness of life what really, really matters. And so I think when we think about Jesus, it really is that grounding reminder of, above all else, our lives are rooted, grounded and planted in him. There's a verse I like to read out which I think really captures the essence of that. So it's from 1 Peter 2. It's a bit of a long one, but it's verses 4 to 7, and it says, "Coming to him as to a living stone, rejected indeed by men, but chosen by God and precious. You also, as living stones, are being built up a spiritual house, a holy priesthood, to offer up spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. Therefore, it is also contained in the scripture, Behold, I lay in Zion a chief cornerstone, elect, precious, and he who believes on him will by no means be put to shame. Therefore, to you who believe, he is precious, but to those who are disobedient, the stone which the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone."
Amen.
And there are definitely two things there that stick out. So one is, irrespective of whether you believe in him or not, he is the cornerstone of existence.
Yes.
All hinges on him. Human history hinges on him.
Yes.
And that's just a truth which I think on that day we'll all see, however you've built your life. But for us believers, I think there's an encouragement there about he is precious. And what's different about that is there's a real kind of, I think, a delicateness about that word, where we've spoken a lot about kind of cornerstones and truths and these hard truths. But there, I think it speaks to the softness of our hearts towards him and our daily approach to him. That he is precious and that he is priority, and how we handle him, how we handle his truths and what his commands to us, his heart for others, should really shape and govern our lives. I don't know if I have time to share just a really quick example today, which it really struck me. So just before here, normally my commute is it's quite a boring commute straight home. So coming here, there was the opportunity to just pick up 1 or 2 things on the way, do a tiny bit of shopping. But at the same time, it was quite time bound, didn't have much time. So I planned it all in my head. I was like, I'm going to go to that shop and get that, go to that shop and get that, and then I'm going to come straight here. Bish bash bosh, done. And so, there's a plan, there's a human plan of like, this is what I'm going to do, and it has to work, in this way. And really out of the blue, someone came up to me and was like, "Hello, how's it going?" He's like, "Can I talk to you for a few minutes?" And he was a young guy, he was definitely younger than me. And if I'm honest, it was probably quickly apparent as we were talking that he had some learning difficulties, but I could just a really sincere heart and wanting to just have a conversation with someone. And so I stopped, I took out my earphones, and we had a brief chat. I asked him about his day, what he does. I could tell he was extremely nervous. I think just this was probably part of his journey of just trying to form conversations, talk to people, and I was really, when you're kind of caught off guard, so you're semi-caught off guard, but you also, I was really intrigued and definitely my heart was softened in that situation. And then it ended quite quickly, and he was like, okay, goodbye. And I said bye, and then as I turned and left a minute later, I was just like, I think so focused on just the A to B that I just initially saw it as an interruption to my day. And even though we had a pleasant conversation, I thought to myself, given how much as Christians we're trying to find opportunities to tell people about Jesus, someone comes up to you in all sincerity and opens up and wants to know about who you are, what you do, and your outlook on life. And I just didn't take the time, or it didn't even really occur to me to share what I claim is the most precious and intimate and precious thing about my life, which is my faith. And I think it dawned on me about it really has to be a daily reminder that I've made that decision as a Christian that, Lord, you're the cornerstone, I'm going to really put you first. But on top of that, I think weekly or daily or just very regularly, we need to have that constant renewal of like, Lord, I'm going to look for opportunities to put you first. I'm going to look for opportunities to make your name known. I'm going to look for opportunities to demonstrate just how precious you are to me. And that wasn't an opportunity for me to kind of beat myself up or think, oh, what could I have done? But just to acknowledge that as much as this is a truth in my heart, it's something you have to kind of constantly cultivate. And I think that is a lesson for me about what it means to really hold God as precious on a daily basis.
That is so true. I think, I guess that's the pursuit of a Christian walk, is to constantly remember what is number one. I feel like recently I had an example where I was talking to God about something. There's a situation in my life I was really struggling to just lay down before Him, and I was trying with all my might to let go of this thing that was so precious to me. And I felt God say, stop looking at that and look at me. Once you look at me, I'll deal with that. Like, you know, that is hard for you. I can understand that's hard for you to just give to me. So just look at me, spend time with me, and I'll do that. And in His own mysterious, wonderful way, slowly but surely, He has been doing that. But yeah, I think you're so right. A daily reminder that look at Him, invest in Him, invest in that relationship, and then let life flow from that place. So we have come to the life admin section of today's podcast. Cool. So in life admin, I just tried to share some like insights about like kind of, you know, better ways to think about life, to think about situations in life, to move through the world that are really practical. And so this week I was praying and thinking, okay, what to share. And we've actually touched on this earlier in today's episode, but this is what I prepared, so I'm going with it, guys. I really felt like God was saying to talk about just really resting and being completely you. So by that I mean it's almost like a challenge to be true to yourself. And you know, but not always going to be perfect. We don't always know the right words to say. Definitely our attitudes and motivations are works in progress, but have the bravery to be true and honest. And as I was praying about this, I was thinking about, you know, how one of the 10 commandments is not to lie. And when we think about that, we often think about it in terms of, you know, don't start a fraudulent empire where you're selling holidays that don't exist. That's a really good example. Don't lie. Or don't promise to do something and not do it. That's a really cut and dry, don't lie. But I really felt challenged of when somebody maybe asks for your opinion and you lie to save their, you know, to buffer their emotional response. Or when you lie to yourself sometimes, or you say you want something that you know you don't want. Like, for example, when somebody says they want to go out and do something, but you know in yourself, actually, you're exhausted, you have to be up early the next morning, so actually another time would be much better for you. I think I have been challenged a lot lately to be honest about what I genuinely need and what I feel in the moment, and to hold my truth as being as valuable as kind of other people's emotions around me. So, you know, for example, often I'm the kind of person, I really like to be accommodating. I really like to, if people want to connect and reach out with me, I'll try and find time to do that. Like my relationships and friendships are so important to me. And I really appreciate when, especially building new friendships, when people reach out to create those spaces. But I've had a difficult month this month, and there've been a few instances where people have reached out to say, oh, let's go out, do this, go out and do this, and let's go out and do that. And I've really felt the tension of, in truth, I just want to be with my family right now. Or in truth, I just need a night alone. That is honestly the truth. Nothing, no shade to anybody else, but that's really what I need. But then also recognizing, okay, this person's reaching out to connect with me, and it's a valuable friendship or relationship. And feeling the tension of who's which truth is a priority. What decision do I make here? Is it selfish to say, actually, here's what I need? Shouldn't I be gracious and kind of accommodate what the other person needs? And I really felt the challenge to just be honest. And much to my surprise, wonderful surprise, because I pray about it in these situations. I often think, let me pray and just let God speak to me in the next day or so, right? And I felt like God said, be honest, because the truth doesn't need embellishment. Once it's true, it can't be untrue. If it's real, it's real. So if you say, look, like I had to say to a friend, I really appreciate that you've invited me out to do these things, but honestly, I just need a couple of weeks to, recuperate. And it's it's not personal to you. Like, our friendship is so valuable to me, but I just need some time. And their response is really so lovely, like really supportive and completely understanding. And it's like something dawned on me that if I hadn't risked maybe feeling a bit uncomfortable to tell the truth and be completely just honest to myself and to the other person, maybe I'd have gone and I'd been resentful and exhausted, and maybe just the whole dynamic of everything would have been so different.
Absolutely.
And so for life admin, my challenge is to be honest.
Yes.
To be like honest, even if you think it's a painful, even if someone says, does this color suit me? If it doesn't, say it doesn't. Like, just hold that truth of the Bible says do not lie, and really try to live it in all the ways that it means.
I'll underscore that and say it's the intention behind it as well. So we all tell the truth, but are you intending to hurt the person's feelings? Are you intending to help them? The way that you deliver it as well, does it need to be said in that moment? Can it be said at a later time? Can it be brought up? It's also treading the intention as well.
Yeah,
because
it's a very good point.
Yeah,
you can't just be insulting people without. No.
But the truth will set you free. But
equally. That's such a true caveat, because you're right. If your intention is to be honest and loving and kind, there is a way to do that.
Yeah.
But you're right. If you're saying something that might be true, but it's going to hurt the person, think about how to communicate that truth in a more constructive way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think something else you said about that tension between, I think, wanting to extend yourself and whether it's kind of to meet up with people versus sometimes you just need that time to yourself. It's such a tricky one. I think it's a journey about being honest with yourself. So for myself, I've learned that it's been in a really challenging way, or I'm learning in quite a challenging way at the moment, about where I think I've reached the other side of burnout, where just completely just kind of, I can't do this anymore, this is just too much. Really struggling with the complexity of things, and then struggling to say no, and probably realising that I was a bit of a people pleaser, just didn't like saying no to anything. And if you say no to, I'm learning that by saying yes to everything, you are saying no to things. You're saying no to spending time with your family, saying no to kind of like good rest, saying no to like meaningful projects that maybe don't have an immediate deadline. Maybe they're personal passion projects, but actually need time.
Yeah.
And actually having that journey of honesty for myself, and it's difficult, and people are gracious, but sometimes people don't fully understand because they don't see your picture. But recognizing that if you don't do that, you're going to end up denying some really valuable things that could have been.
So true. I think the moment you start lying to yourself or to other people, and even if it is for reasons that you think are good or noble, eventually at some point there is like a breaking point that will come. I really realized it in a friendship of mine where I don't like to think of it as I was lying, but I definitely wasn't speaking my truth about certain things I was uncomfortable with. And it's kind of come to a head now where all those things are coming out at once on both sides. And it's like, gosh, if we had been honest over the years, all of this, we wouldn't just kind of be in the mess that we are in. By God's grace, I know He has a plan, and it will work itself out. But it's really struck me that, like, being truthful in the moment can be painful, but it's a lot worse if you let resentment build up, or you let you build a picture that's not real to yourself or to other people.
So can I ask a quick question on that?
Yes.
What tip would you give, or just how would you go about needing to share feedback with someone that you know is a difficult truth for them to hear, but you feel that it needs to be said?
Wow. That one, that's a very good question. To be honest, I think one, I'd really pray about it and search my heart of what is my intention in sharing this. Is it just an opinion? I don't think that that's the way they should do something. Or is it really that I'd like to highlight something that could help their lives? that is hard. I pray about it, and then depending on the relationship with the person, I'll be honest, I'm quite a blunt person, so if there was something difficult, I might pre-warn them and say, look, I've been thinking about a conversation we need to have, and like, you know, I'd only really have that kind of conversation with somebody I'm really close to, so I'd be like, I love you, you're important to me, but I do need to tell you something. It might be a bit difficult. When is a good time for you?
Mm-hmm.
I think don't surprise people with that stuff.
Yeah.
Don't ambush people.
Yeah.
Like, I really, I've been ambushed, and then you're just there like, I just wanted to have my dinner.
Yeah. Oh, that's so true.
I just wanted an evening. And then your friend calls you and you're like, well, now, you know. I honestly think, like, let people know, you know, we are all grown-ups, like, you know, we can deal with life.
Yeah.
And I think if you let someone know, look, I do need to talk to you about it, when is good for you?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I just think we need like half an hour just to chat, and, you know, I don't want to just tell you my side and not hear yours, you know. And then, I guess, prepare what you're going to say and try to pull the emotion out of it. Mm-hmm. Try to pull like any super descriptive words of, you did this because you intended to do this, and you don't put their intentions on it. Just say, this happened and I felt uncomfortable, or crossed the boundary in this way, or I feel like maybe you could think about this situation differently. And try to be rational. I think leave like the baggage and the pain or the anxiety of a situation at the door, and just kind of try to talk to them.
Yeah, be real.
Yeah, just keep it real. And I think, honestly, if there are people in your life that will tell you the truth, keep them.
Yes.
Because they are actually rare,
Yes.
and they love you enough to say it.
Yeah.
Because inevitably they wouldn't have been the only one to notice. But just other people just thought, oh, whatever, it's not my problem. But they actually were like, no, I love you too much to just let this continue.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be my advice.
It's great advice.
Perfect advice.
Yeah, so that's it for life admin, guys. Like, set yourself a truth challenge. Maybe, you know, start slowly. Because I think deceit, you know, it's not obvious sometimes when you're lying. Sometimes you know, oh, okay, I'm lying right now, I know it.
Yeah.
But sometimes you don't even realize you're lying to yourself. So like, just take a little longer to make your decisions. Just look a little deeper. Ask God to show you, and just slowly but surely He'll, you know, help us all get rid of that.
Yes.
Oh, couldn't agree more.
Yes.
Really good advice.
Alright, so we've come to the end of this week's episode, but before we do leave you, Geoffrey, do you have any words of wisdom, a nugget of wisdom, or something that you want to share with our lovely listeners or ourselves? Because we can always
always here to learn.
Yes.
And so it can be anything?
Yes.
Anything. Anything you want us to know.
So I guess I would probably share a nugget from my own life, something I'm learning, is just to set boundaries, and I mean that in the most positive way. I think often we mean that and we think of walls, but I do literally mean boundaries in the sense of define what's important and be really clear on what really matters, and then once you know that, do all that you can to protect that.
Yeah.
Because it's not necessarily bad things that will drown it out. Often it can just be the busyness of life, the affairs of the world that we live in, and the endless stream of, you know, social media. It could just be it could be anything. It could be all the 55 WhatsApp groups I'm part of, you know, all that.
So true.
And it's just noise, but again, is that distracting us from what we know really matters?
Yeah.
And, you know, for different people, it's different things. But just hold on to that and see.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah,
thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
real pleasure.
We really appreciate you, and like, you know, as we say, we really always say that this podcast was God's idea, and we're so thankful for Him bringing you, for everything you shared today.
Yes.
Like, it's been such a blessing.
Oh, thank you. I really have enjoyed myself. I've learned a lot from both of you, and I look forward to having another conversation down the line.
For sure.
So,
for sure.
Yeah.
This has been the Humble Pie Podcast.
Thank you for joining us. I have been Mush.
And I have been Teresa.
We would love to hear from you, so send us an email with your thoughts to podcast.humble.pie@gmail.com.
We are also on Instagram at podcast.humble.pie, and you can find us on YouTube.
Just search for the Humble Pie Podcast.
Thank you for listening.
Spread the word and be blessed.